Viewer discretion is advised for this next story here, as the two top leaders of the FBI say they are certain that Jeffrey Epstein took his own life while in prison, and they pledged to release surveillance video that proves it. Epstein was jailed in Manhattan awaiting his trial on federal sex trafficking charges when he was found dead in his cell back in August of 2019. New York City's chief medical examiner ruled his death a suicide by hanging. Epstein's death triggered a wave of conspiracy theories, with some speculating that he was murdered to protect powerful figures who were associated with him. Speaking with Fox News, the FBI's Deputy Director Dan Bongino revealed that surveillance video showed no one inside or even near Epstein's cell at the time of his death. He added that there was no forensic evidence to show that anyone else was even involved. Prior to his role with the FBI, Bongino was known for expressing his belief that Epstein had been killed by someone. Now, in a separate Fox interview, Bongino's boss, FBI Director Kash Patel, explained that he'd also seen the evidence and confirmed that Epstein died by suicide. The FBI leaders pledged to release more information, including that jail video. So now we wait. Spencer Kuvin is the chief legal officer of Gold Law, and he has represented 9 of Epstein's victims, including the first one to come forward back in 2007. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here, Spencer.
Thank you for having me on this morning.
Of course. And first off, I did want to ask you your overall reaction as you hear that this video could actually be released.
Well, a lot like my clients for the last almost 20 years now, we'll believe it when we see it. And we would also request that there be an independent forensic examination of this video, because if in fact it shows that there is no way that someone else could have gotten to Epstein, then we know there was a monumental failure within the jail system there in New York to allow something like this to occur to an offender who we knew should have been on suicide watch to begin with.
What do you make of the certainty that was Bongino and Patel? They said we are certain, especially after years of public doubt and speculation. What do you make of that specifically?
Well, I look at it with a little bit of skepticism, or we should say a lot of skepticism. In this day and age, when you look at what videos can be created online through AI, we would want a forensic examination of this video to make sure that what in fact they're putting forward to the general public is true. At this point, given the failures by the federal government in handling this case over so many years on behalf of the victims, we don't trust the federal government at all.
I don't know if you've spoken with your clients at all, but do they see this video, if it does exist, as something that could bring closure, or do they see it as maybe another distraction from holding Epstein's enablers accountable?
It's a complete distraction. Listen, the Attorney General said that she was going to release the full Epstein files. What she released was merely a duplicate of what everyone already had. What we want on behalf of the victims is to release the videos from inside the homes of Epstein, both in the islands, Palm Beach, and in Manhattan, where the FBI confiscated those videos showing other people that were visiting Epstein at his mansion. That's what the victims want for closure, is for all of the people that were part of this sex conspiracy to be held to justice.
And I think I know the answer to this question based on that, but some of the survivors have said that they feel kind of let down by the system here. Does video being released change any of that?
Unfortunately, no. Especially video of his suicide. All it does is remind the victims of the failures of the federal government throughout this entire prosecution. From the initial failure of his sweetheart deal that the FBI and the federal government gave him during the initial prosecution, to the failures in letting him go, to the failures in the rearrest and then allowing him to die in jail. This is just repeated failures by the government. What they want is a full accounting on behalf of them for all the perpetrators that were involved in this conspiracy.
We know that Dan Bongino, who's now the deputy director of the FBI, previously expressed quite a bit of skepticism about Epstein's death being a suicide, but now he says he believes that it was. So how should the public interpret that shift? Does it add any sort of credibility to the official account? Does it raise more questions?
Well, I mean, I think that he needs to come forward and talk about the video once it's released and explain to the public his shift and why he changed his mind so that we can assess that credibility as the general public and looking him straight in the eye and seeing what his explanation is for the change in his beliefs.
In the broader context of the harm that Epstein inflicted on a lot of people, how important is the question overall of how he died?
I think it's a great question because, listen, this was a very notorious pedophile who had a sex ring conspiracy on a global basis. And the world wants to know how it is possible that the federal government would allow him to end up dead in their custody. So I think that that is of paramount importance to the general public. We see that with your news station coming forward with these stories now. We see that with the general population's interest in the story of releasing the video, all the way up to our president and the attorney general. Everyone wants to know the truth behind this story because it is important to know. These are things that affect children, minors throughout the world every day. And unfortunately, as part of my job, that's what I do, is I prosecute these types of sex criminals. And this public accounting needs to be had. And we need to see what happened, and we need the truth.
And you kind of touched on this already, but my final question for you is, what do you want to see happen next? What might your clients want to see happen in this situation, whether it's the release of the video or something far beyond that?
We would request the Attorney General, Ms. Bondi, to review the evidence with a fresh set of eyes and to look to see if there are others that need to be prosecuted as co-conspirators that were involved in this conspiracy. That's what the victims want: justice and a full accounting.
All right, Spencer, thank you again for taking the time to join us and share your thoughts, your clients' thoughts. Anything else that you want to add here before I let you go?
No, other than I think that the full story of Jeffrey Epstein, unfortunately, will always remain somewhat of a mystery at the end of the day. There's going to always be questions that arise. And the problem is that those questions occur because of the failures at the beginning of an investigation. We would hope that the federal government looks at this case as a teaching lesson so that going forward, they are fully accountable to the general public about what's going on, and they hold these types of people accountable.
Spencer Kuvin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on this Saturday morning. We appreciate it. And of course, if you are just tuning in, I do want to go over a few more of the details that we have learned here. This is viewer discretion advised, of course, as some of the details are fairly graphic. But those two top leaders of the FBI saying that they are certain that Jeffrey Epstein took his own life while he was in that prison cell back in 2019, and they pledged to release surveillance video that does prove it. We're going to keep you updated here as we get more statements from Kash Patel and Bongino here on Live Now from Fox.